This is a very important debate, and it's something that is very close to my heart. I've spent quite a bit of time in the occupied territories in Gaza and in the West Bank. I have eaten iftar with friends in Khan Yunis. I have sat down with people in Rafah, in Gaza City, and in cities like Nablus and Ramallah and the West Bank. This is a centuries-old conflict. It's not something that we're going to resolve quickly or anything like that. I'm generally proud of what Ireland has done in terms of taking a principled stance on this issue. I see Ireland as the first Western country to have called out the behaviours of Israel as being illegal and contrary to all of the norms of humanitarian and international law. And I made a speech a number of years ago when I was a senator in which I reiterated the fact that one can be opposed to Israeli actions without being an anti-Semite. The two are not mutually inclusive. But many of the commentators I see and I hear from on the Israeli side of the House would try to conflate the two, as if somehow to oppose the illegal and genocidal actions of the Israeli Defence Forces is to be opposed to the Jewish people, to be anti-Semitic, or to in any way question their right to exist or the right to be where they are. Those two things are absolutely side by side, and I have friends who live throughout Israel who are disgusted, appalled and ashamed by what is being done in their name by the current Israeli government. And so that's why this is not easy. There are always two sides to a story. This one seems particularly imbalanced. And I would like to acknowledge those Israelis who see the damage, see the appalling nature of what is happening, the breaches of humanitarian law, the breaches of basic humanity that are going on there. And I applaud them and I encourage them to stand up wherever they can against what their government is doing. Equally, I know lots of Jewish people in Ireland who are appalled, Israeli citizens included, who are appalled by what's happening there. So this is not black and white, and there is not the bad guys and the good guys. We know what Hamas did on the 7th of October 2023 was in itself an appalling act of barbarism. Hamas sacrificed the civilian population of Gaza on the altar of its own political ambition. And nothing more can be said by that. Every one of those hostages should be returned. There is no justification either for keeping them, for allowing them to die, or in the event that they're being returned or their bodies being returned, that they would be paraded as war trophies the way they have been. It is disgusting and absolutely reprehensible and unjustifiable. But by the strange twist, while all of that is true, what Israel has done in response is also absolutely unjustifiable. It is outside the norms of any conflict that I can think of. And when we look back on this in years to come, and when our children and our children's children look back on this, the question we will have to be accountable for is, what did we do to try to stop it? Did we speak up? Did we use our influence internationally to say this cannot continue? Now, I believe in Ireland that we have, and I support the Occupied Territories Bill, but let's be honest about that. It's not going to stop a single bullet being fired. It's not going to save a single Palestinian child from starving to death the way they are at the moment. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We should. But let's look at what we can actually do. And one of the things I was really heartened to learn this week is the fact that now other European countries are coming around to our perspective on this. And I recognise that some European countries have a very difficult history with the State of Israel, with the Jewish people in the aftermath of the Second World War. But none of that justifies acquiescing with the genocide that is currently happening. Anybody watching the televisions in Ireland yesterday and this morning will have seen reports from UNICEF, independent brokers, people who have no skin in the game other than to represent what is happening, telling us about the atrocities that are happening to children. And it's a very, very disturbing set of events. I have a child who will turn 2 next month. The notion that she would be in that position, any of us, the notion that our children or our friends or our family or our parents would literally be starved to death, not because of any good or justifiable reason, not because of any legitimate end, but because there appears to be a bloodlust on behalf of Benjamin Netanyahu and his government to wipe out Gaza. So let's call it what it is. Let's do what we can. And let's also recognise what we can't do. But one of the things we can do is to broker that agreement with our fellow European states. I said at the very start of this, I'm proud of the stance that this government has taken, building the coalition with the countries like Malta and Belgium and Spain and Norway, the recognition of the Palestinian state. These are all important things. But again, though they are important principles, just as the Occupied Territories Bill would be, they have not stopped a single rocket being fired. They have not saved any lives. But what we need to do now is build on that. and speak to our European colleagues in all of the other countries, particularly the countries that are being acquiescent or intransigent on this issue. Make sure they understand exactly what's happening. I'm not in Germany, I'm not in Austria, I'm not in Poland, I don't know what their national media are covering in relation to these issues. But what I see on our televisions, what I see on the internet, from trusted news sources is appalling, is absolutely unforgivable. And it is something that will be a stain on the people of the world for generations to come. So let's take those steps forward. Let's take steps towards building alliances within Europe and showing that we actually respect the rule of law. Because if we don't, then what's it all for? And one of the things the European Union is based on, I consider myself to be a proud European. In about half an hour, I will chair the first meeting of the European Union Affairs Committee in this House. I'm looking forward to that immensely. I'm immensely proud of what we have done within Europe. But I'm also deeply ashamed about what Ursula von der Leyen did, what Roberta Metsola did, members of my own party at a European level. I also recognise that they apologised for it. But it was unforgivable in many respects. To stand next to Israeli ministers and stand by them at the same time that they were openly saying they were going to commit war crimes is indefensible. But let's move on from that and actually see what we can do. Let's see what we can do about brokering alliances with other member states of the European Union, other nations who, like us, are people who respect the rule of law, respect the rule of international law, recognise that you cannot allow to continue in Gaza what has been happening, recognise that the collective punishment against the civilians, the children of Gaza, is absolutely unsupportable. Recognise the fact that the blockading of aid, that most basic thing that we all need in our lives, the food and water and shelter, the fact that that is being blockaded by a state who claims to be part of the international community, claims to be a normal member of the international community, that cannot be allowed to continue. But the thing about it is it will continue until the international community stands up and says it can't. And the difficulty we have is that there are major players within the international community, like the United States and countries within the European Union, who won't take that stance. And as I say, we can understand what their difficult history is, but none of it justifies what's happening. None of it justifies standing by. None of it says it's okay not to challenge Israel on the way they are behaving. None of it says that Israel is not committing genocide. None of it says that Israel is not breaking international law. All of those things are happening. And we, as a member of the international community, and Ireland, a country that has built its reputation internationally on respect for the rule of law and human rights and aid that is true to help people, Ireland needs to stand on its own 2 feet. I acknowledge what the Taoiseach has done in Europe even this week. We need to build on that. We need to stop it, because we will be judged by this by our children and our grandchildren.